Battlefield 5. Firstly, it was going to be Bad Company 3, and then maybe Vietnam. A lot of the community wanted a return to a modern or recently modern era game. What's the current thinking? World War II, of course. And I'm calling it. It's gonna be World War II. And why? Because it's the most obvious choice, and at this point I think that's where their head is at. That's namely EA and DICE. Also, around this time before Battlefield 1 came out, I had sources who were telling me that it was going to be World War 1, but I didn't believe it. I thought it was too different. I couldn't understand how they were going to make it work, and look how that turned out. So for this year's Battlefield, I know it's only rumours, but I'm putting my money in World War 2 because, of course, that's what we need, isn't it? Look, I'm not completely against a Battlefield World War II game with good maps, maybe some mechanical tweaks to make things work, and actual proper destruction. It could be decent. But this year, why did it have to be this year? Because maybe it's to keep the pressure up on COD, but we've got all the Hell Let Loose post-scriptum coming. It's like, for fuck's sake, why do we have to always have this 4 buses coming at once nonsense? Now, on top of that, guess what is rearing its head again? Loot boxes. Everyone said, don't be stupid, LT. They couldn't possibly include loot boxes this year after the Battlefront shambles. And I kept making sarcastic jokes and saying, oh yeah, you think they won't do it? You think they want to do it? Apparently, according to recent sourced information yet again, that's exactly what's going to be in the game. Now, apparently, it's only going to be cosmetic, but think about that. Yes, Battlefield 1 had some sphere of cosmetic loot boxes, but just think in the current climate of strong anti-microtransaction, anti-loot box rhetoric in the community, think about how stubborn, how arrogant, how bloody-minded it takes to put that into the game. To be like, hey community, we heard you on loot boxes, but guess what? Fuck you. Lastly, there's been this past week, I've seen the same quote over and over. Battlefield 1, wild success, 25 million players. No, it's not that, okay? It doesn't have 25 million players. It's had a lot of sales over time. And look, that's still a laudable achievement, but it's not players. And it runs counter to one of the biggest issues kind of in Battlefield over time. It's not sold copies, it's player retention. And it's actually, the biggest issue is not really the player retention technically itself, it's actually reading into what is the cause of that. What's causing poor player retention and poor player engagement? And how do we know this? Well, if you look at the player counts in Battlefield 1, you see when the game comes out, a huge spike, but then it drops off a cliff, and it basically then levels off, and it doesn't go up any further. You don't see, like, suddenly it gains a little bit over time. People like, you know, because think about it. When the game first comes out, there's often things need fixing, guns need balancing, and so they do all these tweaks, they do all these constant community patch updates, you know, this is this month's patch updates, here's all the notes, here's the thing. So theoretically, they're making the game better, they're making it better over time. So you would expect to see a player count tick up because they're making it better over time. But that doesn't happen. It stays level across the board, and it doesn't go up any further. And just think about it, there's a reason for that. It means that players are joining and players are leaving, but the player base isn't increasing or really changing, and what that means is that the player base has got poor retention. It means people are coming in, they're not enjoying the experience, and then they're leaving, and then what you've got left is your core player base, and then that just keeps spinning that cycle. It's not a positive thing, because what it means is people are picking up the game, they're not liking what they find when they actually experience it, and then they leave. There's nothing there outside of the core base. Now, I'll try and explain my thoughts on player retention soon, because there's other games when you look at which have actually increased their player base over time. So this isn't something which doesn't happen. There's games which we've talked about before, like Rainbow Six Siege, where the player count started off low, and then it's actually gone up, and people have actually got into it over time. Battlefield is kind of the opposite of that. But for now, guys, just tell me what you think about this year, yet another World War II FPS. Tell me what you think about loot boxes in the next Battlefield. Is that too much of a fuck you to the community, even if they're only cosmetic? Or has the time now passed for outrage, and we just got to swallow EA's bitter pill in every game now? This is Luton, feeling slightly ranty, signing off.